For a little while now, I've been pretty fascinated and almost obsessed with seeing other people's collections, no matter what it is, how big it is, how small it is. Something about people collecting or having large collections of stuff have always really fascinated me. And being that I have a large collection of a bunch of stuff myself, I thought it'd be fun to take a deep dive into other people's collections and see what they're passionate about. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
I am Dustin Lee, and I am a filmmaker, film enthusiast, video game nerd, dad, all sorts of things.
And
And
what are
you're
you here to show us today?
so you're in my house right now. This is my basement. This is our movie room that I built maybe a couple years ago during the pandemic. So this is where we watch movies. The very first DVD I ever got was this, The Matrix. This was probably the first DVD that everybody ever got.
That's what they got in The Sopranos.
If you were around and you got a DVD player between like 1999 and 2005, this was probably the first DVD that you got. So this was what started it all.
Pretty much just the spectrum of everything. There's no one particular genre that you.
Not really, no. The one thing I don't have much of any of is horror films. I'm not really a big horror film
Really?
person at all. There's just something about the genre that there's maybe a few that I have, like some standouts. I've got The Shining.
Oh, classic.
I've got The Sixth Sense. Maybe a couple of others. I had a copy of The Ring, the American version of The Ring, but I think someone stole it or borrowed it, and I never got it back. But anyway, so like very, very few horror films in there, just because it's just not my favorite genre. I'm more into like sci-fi thrillers. We have kids, so we have a lot of like classic Disney movies.
American Tail.
American Tail, Don Bluth. You know, I had these before we had kids because I just love animated films. One of my favorites is any of the Studio Ghibli movies by Hayao Miyazaki, but
Totoro.
this copy of My Neighbor Totoro is pretty hard to find now. It's the Fox dub. So they had.
Oh, really?
So there were two different versions of this movie. This movie came out in 1988, and Fox, 20th Century Fox, bought the distribution rights for it in the U.S. So they did an English dub of it in the mid 90s, and that's like the first that anyone saw it here in the States. Well, then Disney bought, maybe like in the late 90s, they bought all the rights to the other
Studio Ghibli films.
Studio Ghibli films, and then they redubbed Totoro using the Fanning sisters, Elle and Dakota Fanning.
Oh, wow.
But my family, my siblings and I, we grew up on this one, and we tried to watch like the first 5 minutes of the Disney version and hated it. We're like, nope, this is not, like the voices are different. But I'm sure if you asked people that watched the Disney version first, they would probably watch this and be like, what the hell are these voices?
But that's a pricey item now.
This, I think, if you, I haven't checked in a while, but if you were to go on eBay, this is probably like an $80. So there's another.
Oh, you have Dogma,
So
dude.
this one is also out of print, kind of hard to find, and this is the special edition too.
Well, every copy of that's hard to find. Like, even the standard def DVD, which
Right.
I have, is really hard to find.
But this one, I remember when this came out on DVD, and I saw this at like a CD game exchange, and I was like, "Oh my God, look at the custom artwork on this! I have to have it. It's the special edition." So I sprang for it, and I'm glad I did because yeah, they're not easy to find. They haven't re-released the film at all, I think. So I'm into doing something called fan editing.
Oh, really?
So you're recutting films, to make them different in some way. Like maybe some films that were too long, or some films that.
Topher Grace did that after he shot Black Klansman. He did all three of the Hobbit movies and re-edited them into one.
Topher Grace does not have a better version of The Hobbit than this, because if you look online, just Google Hobbit fan edit. I'm gonna brag for a minute here. Go on Reddit and just ask like some random movie forum what is the best fan edit out there. It's literally this one. This is mine. I edited this fan edit.
Really?
So this is called J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, but most people just call it the Maple Films edit. So on the spine here, that's the Maple
There
Films
you
logo.
go.
These are the Lord of the Rings here. So if you were to say that's how big the Lord of the Rings books were, and they made 3 separate films for that. this is how big The Hobbit would be, but they also made 3 films out of this, right? So there's just way too much fluff in there. So what most people agreed on is that you could probably cut half of that film out.
Oh yeah.
And get a pretty good movie. So that's what this is. So
That's pretty fantastic.
This was my first fan edit that I worked on, and it kind of blew up online.
Well, good for you, man.
And then this is another one I did where it's called Finest Hour, and I mixed Dunkirk and Darkest Hour together because they both overlap in their storylines.
No way.
I put it up. I put it on. There's a website called fanedit.org where people can share their edits.
This is extremely impressive.
The other wild part about these two, especially, is that someone messaged me like a year or so ago, and apparently there's like some black market website that is selling pirated copies of this. So these are already in a legal gray area. I can't officially sell them. Right?
Oh yeah.
If people want to like borrow them or watch them or whatever, that's fine. But some site like actually downloaded like digital versions of my edits and are like selling them for profit. And they're like, "Are you gonna sue them?" I'm like, I don't have any legal ground on that because they're not my films to begin with. But I just thought that was hilarious that like there's like 2 levels of thievery going on.
Oh, yeah, you were gonna let this slip by. I finally acquired a copy of this because that's out of print. Dead Alive. Kubo's great. Kubo and the Two Strings.
I haven't watched it yet. I have it, and I have not watched it yet. So.
Story of my life. I have a lot that I haven't watched.
Yeah.
Now, my first DVD was the special edition of The Lion King. I got
this
that.
One right here?
Yeah, not that box set.
Oh, just another.
The DVD that comes in it. Yeah, that was the first one that I got. And it was a big deal because my mom and my grandmother, who were used to VHS, they were like, you can just put this in. You don't have to rewind it or anything.
You can just sit there. It's like pre-streaming. Like, it's great. These are my second favorite films. Like, I count The Lord of the Rings as one long film.
Which is understandable.
So Star Wars, the original Star Wars, you see the poster there, that's my favorite film, the original Star Wars trilogy. Followed immediately by Lord of the Rings. And I've seen different versions of the Lord of the Rings Blu-rays that like change the color grade. And I've been kind of like hesitant to like, okay, what's the real version that came out? Like, so I haven't updated since these DVDs. I just love the artwork on them.
Yeah, because they look like actual books.
Yeah. Here's another one that's kind of rare. This is from the Criterion Collection. Excellent movie. Have you seen this?
Knights of
Cabiria.
Cabiria.
It's a Fellini movie, and I'm not going to say I'm like an art house snob. I haven't seen all of Fellini's movies, but that is a really good film and pretty hard to find because it's out of print. This is a really underrated, underseen film. Most people haven't even heard of this movie.
Friedkin Sorcerer.
Sorcerer from the 70s. It came out, I think, within a week of Star Wars being released, and everybody just forgot.
Yeah, 77.
Yeah, just forgot about it. It deserves a Criterion release, but the Blu-ray version of that is pretty good quality. This is another one I love. This Blu-ray.
I just got the DVD of it a little while ago. 3 discs.
Turbo
Holy.
Kid is awesome. Like, if you want to watch a movie that has so much passion and energy behind it, it's a super low-budget indie film from, like, Quebec. But the soundtrack is killer. Like, the effects are sweet. It's got some really good, like...
just that artwork.
Practical gore and stuff in it. Like, ton of fun to watch. Ton of fun.
I've heard a lot about Stalker. The, is that Tartakovsky?
Yeah, this is one of his best movies. It's also... just like most of his movies, it's pretty slow. Very slow, a lot of long tracking shots, 161 minutes long. But really cool, and on repeat viewings, it holds up for sure.
I notice you have the first 2 Turtles movies. What about the third one?
Not a big fan of number 3. The first 2 are good enough for me. I have there are some collections where there's like, it's a franchise, but I'm intentionally ignoring certain versions of it. So you've got Terminator 1 and 2, I don't acknowledge anything after Terminator 2.
Well, yeah, because they keep retconning it after the second one with every new one.
The first 2 were perfect.
Especially the second one. The second one is one of the greatest sequels ever made.
Terminator's probably the first one is like one of the best like sci-fi noir thrillers ever. And Terminator 2 is probably one of the best sci-fi action movies ever. Followed by James Cameron's other sci-fi action masterpiece,
Aliens, yeah.
You can't. Those two are just unbeatable. I mean, all of his movies are great. This is probably his most underrated one, and on a regular CRT television, this looked really good. But same thing. That it if you play it on a new TV, it's gonna have letterboxing on the front, on the top and bottom, but then also on the sides. So there's like
it's just a square you're
Yeah,
watching.
it just looks like crap now. So he's been. I remember reading an interview with him probably in the last like 6 months because he was talking about Avatar 2, and someone just asked him like, "Hey, what's going on with the 4K Blu-ray release for The Abyss and True Lies?" He's like, "They're ready. They've been mastered and stuff. I just need to go through the approval process myself." And that's going to take me around like 28 hours, and I don't have 28 hours to spare right now.
Oh, my God.
He's such an asshole, but he's also such a great filmmaker that I can't like get mad at him for like how he talks sometimes.
I notice you don't have the third one.
Again, going back to what I was saying, where I'm intentionally ignoring other releases. I watched The Matrix Resurrections when it came out, and it was so bad that it retroactively made Matrix Revolutions better. Like, I think it's a much better movie now because of how bad Resurrections was.
That's really saying
But
something.
it's still not good enough for me to own. So.
Well, we are going to, you're going to show us your video games now, correct?
Yeah, so that's one half of the collection. Coming here to the 1980s nerd lair that I call my office. I work from home, and I wanted to have a space that just, made me feel like I was, in a comfortable area. So I nerded it out. I've got all my tchotchkes up here on the wall. I built these shelves a few years ago, put some light strips behind them. I've got all my old Star Wars ships from when I was a kid, a bunch of other little knickknacks. And over here is my vintage gaming
Setup.
credenza.
So that's the CRT that you were talking about.
Yeah, you gotta have, if you're gonna do old school gaming, you gotta have that nice, beautiful, listen for it.
Oh, yes.
And a little static on the screen. Ooh. And you gotta discharge it on something metal. Yep. So I've got the old school games set up here on a switcher so that if I put in, let's see, I think I've got Genesis hooked up right now. This is one of those things where, you got to blow the cartridge over and over again. Look at that. So a lot of people that are into maybe an old school game, they might buy those retro bits, those like 10-in-1
or the
systems.
Yeah, the mini NES or
Yeah, and they play it on new hardware with the old games, and that's fine, but they put them on flat screens on the new TVs, but I'm a purist. In my opinion, it's
got to be cartridge.
It was
or
made for an old TV. It should be played on an old TV, and it just looks better that way. So, I've got an old Nintendo Entertainment System, the top loader. So these are a little bit harder to find, but they're also more reliable than the front loaders.
Yeah, because those start to wear out.
They start to wear out after a while. So I got this in high school off a kid. He was selling this, like a couple of light guns, maybe 10 games, and a few controllers for $25.
Oh, that's not bad.
And at that time, this was like 15 years ago. This was selling for 20 years ago. I bought this. These were selling for like $100. So I fleeced him a little bit, but I didn't tell him that. So this is my wife's Super Nintendo, but she brought it down here to belong in the rest of the collection. I grew up with Sega, though. I've always been a Sega guy.
So that's a Saturn,
This
correct?
is a Sega Saturn, but it's not just any Sega Saturn. This is a Japanese version of the Sega Saturn.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so it's pretty much the same inside, but the difference is the shell on the outside is like this light, like beige tan type of color. The American release was black, but I like this release version. And the controllers are a little different too. Japanese Saturn controller looks like. And the American version is black. So
More in line with the Genesis.
yeah, but you tell me what looks more fun. Right?
Well, I mean, that's more appealing to the eye. You're going to want to pick it up.
So, but Genesis and, the whole Sega brand was founded on like trying to be cooler than Nintendo was.
Genesis does what Nintendo
Exactly,
don't.
yeah.
Does. Get Joe Montana free, Pat Riley free, Buster Douglas free, Super Monaco GP free, or Collins free. What Nintendo don't.
That was like the best like hook for, or welcome to the next level, you know. So you could play your cutesy Mario and Kirby games.
But you got
On
blast
Nintendo.
processing over
Yeah,
here.
blast processing that cannot be topped. You know, like it just there's no way. And I didn't bring it out for this, but I also have the 32X add-on that
You
goes on top
do.
of that,
Wow.
along with some of the games for it that are kind of hard to find.
Especially in box like you have them here.
Yeah, the soft boxes they fall apart over time, but this is considered to be this version of Doom is considered to be the best. I've maintained pretty well. Like another game that I love playing on Sega is Zombies Ate My Neighbors. This is a ton of fun to play. Trays that hold more. Gunstar Heroes. This is another probably one of the best games for Genesis.
I think I've played this, yeah, on that disc.
Yeah, it's a 2-player game, ton of fun.
Really, really good one.
Great graphics.
You got Echo the Dolphin.
Got Echo the Dolphin. Yeah, that's a good one.
You do have Alien 3.
Not a great movie, not a great game, but my favorite game probably of all time though is
There's Super Street Fighter 2.
that's a good one.
That's a great one.
This is my favorite platformer.
I beat this. Yes, this is a great game, Sonic 2.
Sonic 2 is one of the greats. One of my all-time favorite games right there. Streets of Rage 2.
Yeah, this is on that collection too. Look, first of all, in the light here, look at that artwork.
Yeah, they just don't make artwork like that anymore. That's back when you're shopping in a store or you're at a Blockbuster and you're looking to rent something.
And you're like, what's more appealing to the eye?
What's more appealing to the eye? Like, you're going to buy something based off of the artwork because the internet didn't exist. And the only way you might know about a game is at your local rental house, or if it showed up in, like, what was it? Game Pro.
Nintendo Power, Game Informer.
Like one of those magazines might do a review on it. But there was it. There was no internet, so you're like, okay, well, this box art looks pretty cool.
And this is pre-ESRB. That was before Mortal Kombat and Night Trap came and made everything.
Yeah, so Streets of Rage 2 didn't have a rating, but by the time 3 came out...
There we go, MA-13.
MA-13, yeah, that was like the PG-13 version, and then there was like I think it was just M.
Oh, Jurassic Park on Genesis. I've heard very mixed things about that.
It's a frustrating game, man. Like, it's cool because you can play as a friggin' dinosaur, but the parts that you're playing as Alan Grant are miserable. You know, like, it just sucks. But eating people as a raptor is a lot of fun.
And here's the first Streets of Rage, so we
Yeah,
can just complete that off.
That's the OG. It's not the best, but, you know, it started it all, so... So yeah, these are fun to play. You know, every now and then you pop them in.
There's Sonic 3.
Sonic 3, and also Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So
Yeah, you're supposed to connect the two because they go one right after the other.
when you play this together as Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, this comes close to topping Sonic 2. Like, it actually tells like a story, and from the beginning to end, it's an awesome game. I've beat this once, and one day I'm going to play it all the way through. It's not a hard game to play. It's just,
Right.
you know, you got to put a couple hours aside to play it. But yeah, definitely one of the gems. I was always Team Sega, so when the Genesis was starting to get old, I decided, okay, it's time to upgrade. But by then, like, Saturn was kind of dying.
Yeah.
It didn't last very long. So I would say probably my favorite console that I own is
The Dreamcast.
my Dreamcast. And just like the Saturn, I ended up getting a Japanese version of this game, of this console, because it was released like a full year before the States got it. So I was,
wow.
This was in high school for me, so I was by far the first person to own a Dreamcast. So right now I have Marvel vs. Capcom in here, which is probably one of the best 2D fighters ever. Ton of fun. And all the games I keep over here. So they're all the Japanese releases, except for a few of them. I've got like a few American versions, but you can tell there's a Japanese version of the game if it's got like these orange tabs. And then if you pull one out, go ahead and pull one out.
There's Soul Calibur.
Look on the other spine, though. It's all in Japanese
Look
characters.
at that.
Yeah. So, but most of the games are in English. Like, you can still play them just fine. Trying to play, I think it was Sonic Adventure in Japanese was a challenge because they didn't dub an English version. It's not subtitled.
Great.
So
You do also keep your CDs up here.
I keep some CDs there. I've got, a few holdouts. Most of these by now I haven't I think I've digitized most of them.
You got to get around to doing Mr. Hankey's Christmas Classics.
One of the first CDs I ever got. Big Willie style.
This has Men in Black and Getting Jiggy with it.
Yep. And he bounced back, and then he slapped Chris Rock, and here we are again. So,
Appetite for Destruction. I just got that for $1 over at Savers. Wow. You'll find, like, that's why you got to scan thrift store CD sections, because you will find, because I found some Metallica in there, too.
Well, so many people are just trying to unload these things, and I think CDs are right now, for the most part, people are just trying to get rid of them. Because it's like, well, I can just listen to it on Spotify or download it. Like, and I'm not as big. I've never been as big of a CD collector. This is the extent of probably what I own.
I mainly collect soundtracks because I have Apple Music, so sometimes they won't have either the full soundtrack or just the soundtrack in general. Yeah. So I'll just rip it to iTunes, and then there we go. Now, what exactly is this? I understand it's a DVD player, or?
Yeah, this is a DVD player, but it's also a DVD recorder. This is old news, but it takes DV tapes.
Oh, from like a camcorder.
So from one of these old cameras that I had in high school. It's what I shot like all my original like short films and movies on. If you wanted to convert those to a DVD, you would pop it in here, and then it would dub it on there.
Wow.
So, and I haven't used it in a while, but because I've already transferred everything, but it still works as like a regular DVD player.
Is there anything else you'd like to show us?
I do. Actually, I have one more thing. I just looked at it right when you said that. Good timing. So, in a few weeks, we've got the premiere of Even Fall.
Which I am hosting, by the way. Shameless plug.
Which Kyle is hosting. Shameless plug. And here's another shameless plug. I just got these in last night from Vista.
Hold on, a Proton Pack. You just opened this door and I saw the Proton Pack.
That too. Sorry. Yeah, I've got a lot of things here. There's a Proton Pack in here, and it works. So I just got an order of 100 11 by 17 posters here. So this is the official poster for Even Fall, and you get to have the very first copy of it.
Look at that.
So that's for you.
So sweet. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
With me as the MC, everything's a fun night.
Absolutely.
Well, Dustin, thank you for coming on. Thank you for showing us your stuff. Is there any parting words that you have for anyone?
No, I hope you enjoyed what I had to offer, and I was thinking at some point I might want to do like a gaming series where I invite people over on like a random Friday or Saturday, and we pick one game out of here to play,
should.
And then we just sit on the floor like kids with like some pizza and just play a game and then record ourselves like talking about the game. Like, that's an idea I had.
That's a perfect idea. I was thinking about doing that, but with bad games.
Bad games? Yeah, we can pick bad games too, because there's, they're not all rosy. There's some shitty games out there.
Well, Dustin, thank you for coming on, and the audience will see you again in a couple of weeks for Evenfall.
Cool. Peace. Thank you.
In fact, I think I feel a song coming on.
Those girls looking right, some looking a mess. That's why they spilling drinks all over your dress. But Louis Vuitton bras all over your breast. Got me wanting to put hickeys all over your chest.
I think I know.